Yeah, yeah.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah. Well, I will need to, so I need all right, okay. She'll come.
Yes.
Thank you, Tom. Right, so welcome to everybody around the table today. Members of the public sitting down there, anybody that's joining us, and anybody else that's joining us via Zoom. Sorry, via live stream. I also want to acknowledge today that Kapokahiri Matchwork and Tumahoe are joining us via Zoom, as is Councillor Gillette. He will be joining us around about 2 o'clock. Just acknowledging that for today's meeting. The opening karakia. Would anybody like to read that this afternoon? Ideally for the English version to be used. Ellie, do you want to do the karakia? All right. Kia moana, te warino, kia papapapa, puna muti moana. Hei hurahei, ngā tātou, au te reini nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou ie, tātou katoa, hui e, taiki e. Apologies, we have an apology from Councillor Munns. And as I've said before, we have Kaifakahiri Matchwork and Tumahoe via Zoom and Councillor Gillette to join us shortly. Can I have a mover and second to please resolve that the apology from Councillor Munns be received and accepted? Thank you, councillors. Councillor Maitland, Councillor Burton. All in favour? Gary, thank you. Interest register has been circulated via Microsoft Teams, as you're all aware. There's been no changes made to the interest register. Please ensure if you have any changes to your circumstances that you record them and send that through as a notification. Urgent items not on the agenda. There are no. Nothing there. Public forum, we have no requests from the public for today's meeting, but we do have one for next month, so we look forward to that at that time. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes of meetings. Firstly, we have the council meeting minutes of 29th January 2026. And with that, I would like to make a clarification regarding comments made at that meeting about a cap on the FTE staff numbers. The reference to that was it was a temporary measure that was put in place by previous management for a fixed period of time, and that time frame has now lapsed. It actually lapsed a few years ago. So that's just a clarification on that point that was raised, and also noting too that that original meeting was actually held in confidence. The extraordinary council meeting minutes of 18th February 2026 is the other minutes that we will be accepting and resolving on now. So resolution is that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held 29 January 26 and the extraordinary council meeting held 18th February 26 be confirmed as a true and correct record of the meeting. And mover and seconder, please.
Sorry, to the chair. I'd like to make an objection on the minutes for the extraordinary meeting for the that's the one where we discussed the confidence. Is that the meeting that we had?
No, that was when we approved the submission.
Oh, sorry.
Public.
Well, Yeah, I thought it was a confidential meeting you were referring.
No, we will be doing that in the confidential part of the meeting. Yep. Right, so we revert back to the resolution, that is the acceptance of the ordinary council meeting held on 29th of January 2026 and the extraordinary council meeting held on 18th February 26 be confirmed as true and correct record of the meetings. Move and seconder, please. Councillor Manera, move and seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Martin. All in favour? Carried, thank you. Deputy Mayor Councillor Burden approved that his digital signature be added to the confirmed ordinary council meeting minutes of 29 January 2026 as acting chair of that meeting. And I, as Mayor, approve that my digital signature be added to the confirmed extraordinary council meeting minutes of 18 February 2026. Did you get the note on that clarification? You've got that on there? Yep, good, thank you. Next on the agenda, we have the action list, and we will hand over to Chief Executive Barb to run through that. Thanks, Barb.
Thank you. I'll take the action list this week because most of the actions are actually due within March. However, there are two actions just to bring to your attention. Action number 5, which was a request for a roundtable meeting to discuss issues at Lake Canary. Just so people are aware, we are in correspondence with that group. We're just waiting to set up a meeting. So once we've had that meeting, I will come back and pose that item for you. And the second one I just wanted to draw your attention to was item number 9. We've got the paper being provided in terms of February 2026, which is this meeting. And that will be around the consenting and compliance committee. So that's on the agenda. I would just like to raise with council, if they're happy, item number 8, which was a reference to Tim Cadigan presenting on the water treatment regulations, has actually happened in December. If people are content, I'd like to close that and put it on to our register of closed items. For those folk who weren't here for the last training, one of the things that we agreed was that whenever anything came off an action list, it would be put onto the closed register. So if at any point you would like to see an item in retrospect, it is actually available there. So there's no risk in taking them off this action list. Is that okay with you? Okay, great, thank you. That's the end of my action list. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Barb, for that. The resolution is that the financial report, how did I manage that? The resolution is that the updated action list from the Chief Executive be received and those items completed be removed from the list as advised by the Chief Executive. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? And I'm sorry, Paul, you've got your hand up. I'm not too sure what stage that went up. I do keep looking up there for raised hands.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, I raised my hand when you gave that clarification about the cap on staff numbers. Because
Well, it was clarification and not something that's up for discussion.
Well, I do want to record that that's not my recollection at all, and that I am very clear that it was a resolution of the full council that the staff numbers are capped. It wasn't a temporary measure.
Thank you for that. Paul, I have gone through, the staff have gone through the records, as have I, and we cannot find any formality of that, but I'm not going to have that as a discussion point now. It was a clarification that needed to be recorded against that, because I believe...
I'm clarifying, Your Worship, because it's wrong.
There was also a point that came up in the council meeting that wasn't actually structured to be discussed at that time anyway. We've got that on record. Thank you, Papa Harry Matchwick, and noted. So if you would like something on the agenda at some other time, let's put it there.
Well, I would, because I'd like to see where is the paperwork that proves that, because I could find that the resolution
And I also remind you
the opposite.
Originally discussed in a confidential meeting.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It may have been discussed at one confidential meeting, but this was not. It was an open meeting.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Right. Presentations, there are none, but I'll take that opportunity to just update with my monthly report. It's a verbal one as usual. on just what I've been doing, official attendance and meetings. It's quite light this month compared to normal. And this next month's about to go nuts again, but that's all right. This gives you a bit of an overview of what I'm doing outside of the normal council meetings and workshops that we have. So actually with that, I guess we just need to receive that, don't we? Yes, can I have somebody please just acknowledge that and we receive it? Is that an agreement? Thank you, councillor Maitland. Can I somebody thank you? Thanks, councillor Martin. Thank you for that. Right, moving on to staff reports. First up, we have the financial report and we have Stephen here for that. Welcome to the table, Stephen. Pages 20 to 35. And the floor is yours, Stephen.
I think the report is read. Hopefully you've noticed that we've switched over to the new dashboard, which is something obviously we've been looking at. Although I think I need to acknowledge, I think there might have been an issue when it was sent out digitally that it's ended up on multiple pages. My version is much cleaner and nicer and that it prints on one page, but I think you might have a slightly different version because I think there were issues with resolution, etc. So we'll work on that for next month to try and tidy that up a little bit. As we discussed, we've kind of gone down with a red, amber, green status. So I'm proposing instead that we'll ignore green ones because we're happy and there's nothing to report. There are a couple of red numbers on here at the moment. So revenue was down year to date to January. This is mainly just timing on grant funding. So it's not a particular issue, it's just a timing issue. We're just still waiting for funding to come in on certain projects. Part of this money actually relates to the airports. And as we'll come on to later, that some of the capital schemes are moving around, so we'll have an update on that shortly. Not today, but we will update on the capital scheme. And so part of that money will actually move into the next financial year. So I'm anticipating that we'll see this drop in grant funding will kind of be reported through to the end of the year now, because this money will now come in a different financial year. So because it's a 100% funded scheme, there's no impact to council. It's purely a timing issue, and it just makes our accounts unfortunately look off in terms of revenue. Expenses were slightly over as well. There's not a massive variation. Again, we'll come on to the next page. The main issue is the depreciation issue, which reported in the last two council meetings. So that's obviously continuing. That's the main variance that we're suffering at the moment. The only bit to note slightly, rates to operating revenue is slightly below where we would expect. But again, that's grant percentage number. So obviously if grant funding is lower, then rates by fact must form more of our total revenue. So it's just a factor of the rates, the grant funding being missing. And then finally, capital expenditure is running slightly behind again the airport. So that's the reason that's happening. And then the essential services ratio, which is whether or not we're keeping up with our renewals, is mainly down to roading, which is obviously light in the first half of the year. And then this is now when we'd expect to start catching the roading program up. So that should as well catch up. So the more timing issues than anything else. Just wanted to pull out on the next page on the statement of comprehensive revenue and expenditure. We've always had a full year forecast, which up until today, we've always just reported it would be the same number. You will notice that we've actually made some additions to this now and changes. So again, just pulling out, kind of repeating myself a lot today, grants and subsidies have dropped. We're no longer projecting 25 million. That's because of the grant for the airport. So that has now been, we expect to receive about 2 million this year in grant funding towards the airport. The rest of it now will appear in the next financial year. So that's really all of that movement relates to grant funding. I'd just like to know employee benefits continue to run under budget is one of the major differences. Depreciation, as I already mentioned, we're now picking up that we expect depreciation to be 9.3 million by the end of the financial year, which reflects the $1 million error that we discovered in the budget that I'm referring to. So as of today, we're about 600,000, but that will continue to go wrong each month until the end of the financial year. And other expenses have dropped significantly, which again is the airport. We've now removed it. The airport's slightly unusual, and apologies for over explaining something, but the airport will basically receive 100% grant funding. The asset won't belong to us. We will hand it to the airport when it is complete. So that from the accounting term, it becomes a vested asset. So a vested asset is basically an asset that you are gifting because it's not work that we ever intended to keep. But the way we account for it is we show all of the revenue, all of the grant funding as a revenue, and then we actually show it as an expense. So we show that council is giving $16.4 million worth of expenditure away. It's not true, obviously, because we haven't paid for it in the first place. So it is an accounting issue, but it creates a timing problem, which is why you'll now see that we're saying our surplus for the year will be 5 million. So the reason for that is that the grant funding for the year is 16 million, of which 2 million we have received or will have received by the end of the financial year. So we'll record 2 million. We will have spent $2 million, but because it's a work in progress, you can't show that for under accounting treatment as an expenditure. So it's actually held on our balance sheet as a work in progress. So we have a mismatch. So we're showing 2 million of income, but no expenditure, which is why we certainly look like we've got this surplus. That will next year will unwind, because next year we'll only have 14 million of grant funding, but we'll have a 16 million cost. So we'll effectively look like we'll be 2 million down, so that's hopefully that's a bit just a technical issue, but hopefully explains why we've got these strange movements in the numbers. And the final point I just wanted to raise was that swaps have returned to positive now, because I know they've been unfavorable for us until now. They've actually gone into positive, which is what we were hoping and expecting them to do. And I know there's been an issue around the Hokitika swimming pool final claim. We've chased MB and asked for a meeting to actually say to come to the table and say, what is the delay with this grant? Because it's just, we're not getting anywhere at the moment. It is, it's very late. So if they don't ever respond to our owners, we'd nice if we have a meeting. So we're trying to arrange a Zoom meeting with them just to get them to acknowledge what the issue is. That's. I'll just take any questions.
Any questions, please? I have one, but not for you, Stephen. Sorry, it's for Earl and relative to the statement of comprehensive revenue and expenditure. So we've got the waste disposal levies being 86,000 higher. Do we know the difference between the impact of tourists versus cost escalations? I presume we do have that figure.
Through the
Oh,
chair.
sorry,
Just-
Stephen.
No, can I just interrupt? So is this under note 4? Sorry, is it under? Yeah, so just, sorry, I keep, this is additional revenue, just making sure that it's understood that it's revenue, not cost. Because we had this item a little bit. I tried to reword it so that it's clearer. So this is additional revenue that the council has received. It's not an additional cost that we've incurred.
The revenue, sorry.
Getting money.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't look at the revenue.
It was, yeah. That's okay. I mean, if the questions are on revenue, but just making sure that it's understood that is, I'm trying to write it in a word that it makes it clear that it's favourable to us, but I need to do better.
It's been written the other way around.
Yes, so I'll try and rewrite it again to make it much clearer that that is an additional revenue to the council.
Yeah, okay, which is good because normally it's been the other way around.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So any questions for Stephen, please?
Through the chair, can I also just say, to Stephen and the team, there's been a lot of work of trying to understand some of the financials coming forward, and I think we're getting into a place where it's actually starting to get a reporting sequence happening, but there are still a few challenges in terms of the mechanisms that we're using in terms of where Stephen and the team have been rising above them, but it has been a bit fraught. So I think that the report, happy to have any feedback on terms of the reporting, if you think there's anything additional that we'd like. I know Stephen's offered that for folk to come and talk to him, so happy for that to happen if it does, but it's still a bit of a work in progress, but I think we're getting into a bit more of a clear year in this, so it's a bit more positive for us to see. So thank you to the team.
Stephen, just with the capital expenditure, which is what's at page 36.
Yes.
So year-to-date expenses versus the annual plan, and we haven't got that long to go before we're at the end of the financial year. So is the majority of those expenses going to be coming in the next 4 months?
Yes, so through the chair, we've had Bill and I have been working closely so with the district assets team and finance to look at capital expenditures. Obviously, as you say, one of the large numbers is the airport project, so it's a 16 million project. As I said, that's expected to be 2 million this year, so the vast proportion of that money will be transferred to the next financial year. We're currently working through the carry forwards. My understanding is we need to come to council to seek approval for carry forward, so we've identified those. So there are some schemes that we would be proposing to be carried forward, but I believe the majority of the work will be,
Through the chair, the large capital program, particularly around road surfacing, and that's going to be coming in now. The weather starts.
Through the chair, I know there's been repeated comments about timing, but the capital expenditure, it's just one of those things we need to do, but to provide some assurance to the councillors that Bill and the team with Stephen have been going through the capital program quite line by line to unpack what's coming through and where it's going. And we are doing the workshop on capital, so that you can get a better line of sight on that evening, but we have undertaken quite a strong stock taking that going forward.
just through the chair, that obviously the dashboard was kind of the first change. So again, that when I've been working on the capital program, so at the moment, obviously, we're literally just showing you the expenditure and full year budget. We will start to include capital reporting, so there's more detail on that. And the same for the rest of the reports. You know, the kind of the dashboard was first stage, and then I want to work through the rest of the financial reports and take feedback from council well if they'd like to see and make changes. So, but capital obviously is a big one. We need to improve our reporting.
Yeah, and through the chair, I mean, a lot of our projects are, as I've said, weather dependent. It can also be environmental or resource consent dependent. So they can chop and change it, but the airport's more around finalise the design and stuff. We've got a few environmental issues up there we need to deal with. And we're going to run out of time to do the servicing this financial year. So that's the large proportion of that project will happen next summer, which is hopefully August.
Councillor Maitland.
Through the chair, what's the swimming pools in the annual plan costing there? What's planned for that?
Yeah, there's $1 million budget against me.
That's the heating units. So it's a replacement of going from diesel fired heaters into more air conditioning type units.
So it doesn't include the paddling pool that was previously.
The chair, and the roof as well. Is that in their budget? Yeah, roof and heating. They're not doing the resurfacing around the.
Anything further, Stephen, please? Oh, sorry, Councillor Martin.
The unbudgeted capital expenditure, is there any significant items or?
Through the chair, there's two projects. I've written it down in my past two reports, which projects there were. I believe one's at Franz Joseph. It's about $40,000. I think what the scheme would have been. Was it Action Works? But basically know that there's about 5 schemes. They're all that make up the 90,000. Said Franz Joseph one. I can't recall it, but I can come back to council and confirm what the other scheme was. But there were basically 2 emergency work schemes that weren't budgeted.
Sorry, yes, Councillor Martin.
The vacant positions, are those positions filled or should be?
Yeah, so through the chair, some of them have now been filled. So some of this is previous vacant positions that were vacant and have now been filled. So that will always remain. There are still some vacant positions, but they're all being advertised and will be filled. I mean, I think it's mainly been obviously the change in the senior leadership team. There was positions were empty for quite a long time, so that will stay as a underspend this year. So, but all of the open vacancies are either actively being advertised or shortly will be.
I think we had talked about in terms of vacancies, acknowledging the previous discussion, but actually every vacancy is being scrutinised because, you know, we're wanting to try and make sure that we've got the right frame for the vacancies that we're going forward. So we do look at every vacancy. It doesn't just get, oh, well, there's a vacancy and we re-advertise through SLT. They're brought up through to SLT and SLT has a conversation about the vacancy. So there's a, if you like, a filter system to make sure that we're clear that that's what we need and that's where it's going to be put forward to. This needs to be talked about for every dollar there. Thank you.
Sorry, I should have said at the start of the meeting, because surely funds turned off.
It is.
Yeah, no.
Through my feelings.
Just as also a FYI too, because it does involve expenditure, it's the road at Jackson Bay is closed again. We've had another significant slip on slip two. And there will be the need for, I guess, unbudgeted expenditure. We get that, it's through the significant road funding that we get to that area. So that will be something that isn't there affected in next month's financials. Unfortunately, the slip's significant, that the road will close for potentially a couple of days, maybe a bit more, but all haste is involved with that one. Are there anything further for Stephen, please, on that questions, clarification? No. If not, can I have a mover and a seconder, please, so we can resolve that the financial financial performance report for 30th of January 2020 be received, please. Councillor Maitland, all in favour? Thank you. Thanks, Stephen, very much for that, and for the amount of work that's going into the events where they are. Really appreciated. Next on the agenda is the delegations manual, and again, we have Stephen presenting on what they've said.
Thank you, Richard. So I'll take the report as read. This is basically administrative work. The delegations manual sets out the financial authorities that are delegated by council to staff, and then staff's ability to delegate further down as is required. It also covers regulatory delegations, and has been updated from the previous one. I think we stated the last report was last updated in December 2022. Just to say as well that it's not just a paper exercise. We do go through, as Barbara said before, and we, the SLT is actively involved in all of these decisions. So we've gone through as a team, looked at where we think it's appropriate levels of delegation. Work, assuming the policies are adopted, has started and is waiting for a council to adopt it. If council do adopt, then we'll make changes in our systems in the background. So again, it's not just a paper exercise, it's impacts on operational, where our purchase order system works and where our finance control and purchasing system works. So any questions?
Yes, Councillor McKenzie.
Through the chair, thank you. I made these notes a few days ago because it's quite heavy reading. One of the delegations states that the chief executive has an authority over interpretation of all delegated authority, which some delegation of power delegated to senior managers. My thinking is, does giving the chief executive this much authority mean too many decisions at all of the organization? And what checks are in place to make sure other staff are still making decisions consistently and can be held accountable?
Yep. Through the chair, I think it's a really good point, because I think sometimes you get in a situation where there becomes a bottleneck where everything has to flow up, and it becomes a trust and confidence issue. I think my experience has been that it's I worked quite hard with Stephen about how we're balancing that trust and confidence. We've got good staff here, and we've had good auditable accounts going forward. There's no reason to believe that there is anything untoward or any evidence of anything, and we're very grateful for that. But I think my philosophy around this, and that's what's probably also reflected in this, and I don't think that's been a change from previous years, but my philosophy is that the responsibility has to flow up to a suitable level, but everybody who undertakes a purchase order has to then sign off to this manager who signs off to say it's been received, it's been accepted. So there's a flow going up, so that it's not just a tick box exercise at the top, because otherwise I wouldn't know what has been done at a lower level. So when those ones we believe are appropriate, I would have to say to you that we've probably been a little bit harder than in previous years. We've constrained a little bit more because we actually want to gather in some of the delegations, not because we have a mistrust of our staff, but because actually it was very onerous. There were numerous staff that could sign off. So we've tightened that up in this delegations manual, and I don't make an apology for that, but I do acknowledge it. And as time goes, we'll be able to smooth that out and see where that goes. But it's a very good point, but I think it's set at the right level for this delegation manual for this period of this training.
I was just wondering about with the tenders committee that they can approve from 100,000 to 499. is that for individual parts of the contract? So for example, a job requires 3 or 4 contracts and they may amount to say $1 million. Are they sort of put together as that amount for the tenders committee? Or, yeah, I'm just wondering what sort of curve.
So through the chair, if I can just clarify, Councillor Maitland, is your concern, I get your point, there can be multiple fragments of contracts that go through. My understanding is for the tenders committee, you would always see the complete picture of whatever was being contracted and where they were allocated to go to the tenders committee. My expectation would be that I wouldn't be signing off on single contracts for multiple contracts for a job. I'd expect to see a full complete documentation of that, and then I would see where the levels were and what they were. But I'm happy to go to Stephen if he has.
No, through the chair, yes, that's correct. It's full contract values. So I assume the concern is, as you said, that we have 100,000 contracts that submit at 300,000, which is then effectively beyond the delegated authority, but that's not the case. It is individual full contracts. So yeah, there's not a workaround.
Yes, Councillor Mackenzie.
Chair. So this point is on enforcement and prosecution powers. Given the sensitivity of enforcement decisions, I would like to confirm that prosecution and statutory enforcement actions are subject to documented internal decision-making protocols to ensure consistency and fairness. And the other thing was the warrant schedule wasn't attached to this document, so there's no way of knowing. It says at the end of it, refer to warrant register for details, but there's no separate document.
Through the chair, apologies. I'll make sure that that's circulated and attached onto that. With regards to enforcement, sorry, Councillor Mackenzie, what section is that under the? I think it would be under the general manager regulatory and compliance, is it?
Well, it's mentioned a whole heap of times.
Okay.
Main section is the warranted officers. I guess it applies to that. And then lost it.
If we can have pages relevant to all the specific parts or whatever is relative to it, certainly helps for everybody to be able to track. Councillor Martin, we'll take your question while we.
Just hopefully clarification on just a graphical error. On page 49, which reference to 22.1 A to G above. It should be 21.1 A to G above. Or should it be? Page 49.
There was no page 49.
Oh, sorry, 49, and page 9.
Page 9 of the actual, yeah. So there's 21.2 no officer outside the powers listed in clauses 21.1 page above.
There's a typo.
It's just
21.1.
It should be 21.1.
Yep.
It's page 66.
There is
Of the agenda.
on the total agenda,
Yeah,
which is page 26 of the panel.
25. Oh, sorry, 26, sorry. You're right. So it's about the Resource Management Act section. There's a mention that they discuss it with their direct manager, but is there anything kept in writing?
Through the chair, I mean, the SLT has been implementing more robust internal controls and policies. So, see, Lee as the GM for that section would be aware of if any action was taken further. So his team wouldn't act with that as authority. We have internal processes being put in place.
Your question is it recorded anywhere so that in a documentation trail you could track it?
Yeah, are they documented in terms?
I'm sure it is, but it's probably not a bad idea to actually make sure that it's clear in here. I'm
Yeah.
sure that it will be,
Yeah.
but I think that we can always make that to make it crystal clear so people would look, because an overview would look.
Yeah.
Okay, no, good point, thank you.
The other point, the chair, through the chair, was the press release wording.
What page?
Sorry. Free.
I have the liaison.
So it's related to this.
Press release. It's it.
Well,
I'll just do it.
well, we need to move on, that's all. We can't spend time surfing.
Through the chair, happy to come back to every point.
Oh, here it is, sorry, it's page 18. Authority to issue press releases provided however that such press release will not anything without goodwill and reputation of the council may be prejudicially affected. I would say goodwill and reputation is very subjective, so I prefer the communication guidance to be framed around accuracy, confidentiality, and policy compliance rather than reputational judgments.
Do you mind if we go back and check that, because I think there might be some requirement. I'm not sure, but I think there might be some, and
There's just no way to measure,
Yeah.
you know, goodwill and
I'm
reputation.
fine if we have to have that included, and if we need to look at this, we can have additional bits for you, but I just want to make sure that we don't look to remove something that we actually have to put in because it's part of the requirement, if that's all right.
Yeah.
And bearing in mind too, this is about delegations, not about quality, the content that you're leading to there, councillor Mackenzie. This is about delegations, so the wording is based along delegation and the legal requirements that need to be worded in there.
I can check, we can check and come back. Thanks.
Right, anything further for Stephen regarding the delegations manual? No, okay, so the resolution is that the report be received and that council adopts the amended delegations manual and publish it on the council's website. I have a movement or a seconder, please. Councillor Manera, thank you very much. Seconder? Thank you, councillor Walker. All in favour? Councillor Mackenzie, are you in favour?
Abstain.
You're abstaining, right? I need to be aware of that. Recorded. Right. So that's 1, 2. No, it doesn't. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 councillors approved and 1 abstention. Stephen's not there yet, so, right, okay. Sorry, Stephen Gillette, councillor Gillette. Right, moving on to the West Coast Triennial Agreement, and again, thank you, Stephen, for that report. Chief Executive to speak to this report, Barb, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and just to the council members above, and actually released it in the list of things, so you don't need to bring up which.
Thank you, Stephen.
In a bit.
One small piece to come back to,
Yeah.
other than that, it's free to the wild. In terms of the West Coast Triennial Agreement, I'm sure as spoke have read the, it is part of our Section 15 of the LGA 2002 Act that we have a requirement that we have a triennial agreement in place, and it's signed by the 1st of March by the by the local body. The only difference between this proposed triennial agreement and the terms of reference is that there's been an addition of signature of the Development West Coast Chair for completeness, and there was a discussion about that, and that was proposed across all of the councils that they would put that into the proposed papers. So it's just letting folk know that's the only change from the last triennial agreement.
Thank you. Any questions on that, please? Councillor Mackenzie.
Good Chair. I think the comments about refraining from expressing criticism to each other publicly kind of conflicts with elected members' freedom of speech obligations.
This has been
Sorry, I'm
signed.
not finished. Democratic accountability to constituents. And I would suggest that they change the syntax to parties will, where practical, seek to resolve disputes through direct engagement before public commentary.
Councillor Mackenzie, this has already been signed by the council's secretaries. This is presenting the report. It has been well reviewed by iwi and the secretaries as far as content goes.
Well, it's here, through the chair, the option one is to adopt it or do not adopt it. So why are we asked to review it if you're not going to listen to our commentary on it?
Well, we're listening to your commentary, but I'm just saying to you is that this has already been circulated between iwi and the councils for ensuring we've got consistency through the structure of the paper. So.
So through the chair, are you not wanting to hear our comments?
Through the chair, I wonder whether, because I take your point, there's a discussion, but the issue is that to change anything on this paper would require us to go back through all of the councils. I wonder whether if it's material and people feel that it's of that much section, that we could take it back for a discussion. If we adopt, we could take it for a discussion with the other councils to see their position, or frame it so that we could put it somewhere without it being formally within this paper, but it was noted and people knew that that was a practice that we did. We could look at it that way perhaps. I'm just trying to find the middle ground. That was all I'm saying.
Through the chair, I just don't get why it's suddenly dropped in our lap and we have no option but to.
Sorry, Mary.
Yes, thank you. I understand what Councillor Mackenzie's saying, but I guess it shows the tension between the need to have a mayors and chairs forum that represents the leadership of the region, and it's nimble and can respond quickly to the government, and going back and having everything by decision by committee. So I mean, mayors and chairs isn't there to make decisions, I might add, but it's there to provide the leadership, and there's quite a distinction between that, and perhaps that could be explained better, but probably taken offline. But I mean, this is mayors and chairs. iwi forums operate throughout the country, and this is how they do it. I mean, they don't come back to every single matter that's discussed isn't taken back to the constituent councils and Runanga, for instance. You know, there's so it's left as a truly as a leadership role.
So just to follow up from Paul, is that what we're seeking is endorsement of the agreement. That's what we're seeking here. It's not a matter of following the agreement to pieces and editing it. It's endorsement of the agreement. And as with most agenda items, we either approve or we don't, and we have options set in front of us as to which path we take. But this is not to be editing the agreement, this is to endorse the agreement.
So through the chair, if we don't endorse the agreements, what happens?
Can I ask why you wouldn't want to endorse it?
Because fundamentally, this one statement affects our freedom of speech obligations. And it's not been thought through or written properly. The other councillors can disagree with me and I'll move it to go for it, but that's the point I'm trying to make.
It's fine. Paul, have you got your hand up again, or you wanted to speak again? Yes, okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify on that. If we didn't have if you didn't endorse this agreement, it sends a signal to the government that we're not of a united front on the Taipōtini, and is the exact opposite of what we have been portraying to the government, which is why we've managed to get a lot of traction. Dare I say it, that the big project that's right on our horizon now for the extension of the Hokitika Airport that Her Worship pushed through, that was pushed through initially through the forum of the iwi, the Mayor's Chairs and Iwi Forum, because that's what the government was treating with. They were treating with that level of leadership. And if it hadn't been there, we wouldn't have got that money. And that's just one example. But, you know, as I say, iwi Mayor's Chairs forums exist everywhere. And this is what the government turned to in the first instance. We would be much the poorer if we didn't have this. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Mackenzie, can you just exactly which is the part that you are finding difficult? Sorry, Jim, I'm just trying to work out how we can.
Refrain from expressing criticism of each other publicly through media or any other form of violence, except it screams will occur from time to time. The issues of administration.
Page 87. Under the agreement.
And what is the problem with that?
It kind of impinges on our.
Well, no, it's actually talking about being respectful, and, you know, expressing criticism. Criticism is not always a respectful way, and this is talking about managing ourselves, and we've been doing that recently, you know, with local waters and the government reform. We may have difference of opinion around the table, but we certainly do not go out and bag one another or say anything derogatory or defamatory against one another's stances. So this is talking about managing ourselves well and respectfully. It's not about stifling the ability to speak. Sorry, Councillor Walker.
Through the chair, and it does say refrain. It's not a civil offence or anything. So I think you still, I mean, legally you still could share your opinion, but so I don't think it's necessarily stampede on any rights or anything. It's my reading of it anyway. It's more of a guide than a rule.
And bear in mind too, is that once we make a decision, that is the decision of that forum. So it's no different to council. Once we have a decision of council, even if you've voted against something, you do not go out and say that. You go out with the decision that council has made. And we are no different to that.
Through the chair, that all being said, I think what this is saying, Councillor Mackenzie, is not trying to restrict people having a voice, but providing a pathway for how that voice can be expressed. And also an opportunity that while they acknowledge that you can't stop somebody from saying what they say, which is your point, I think, about restricting voice. All it's saying here is that there is a principle in a way that this particular agreement would like to see that couched. So open discussion, have that conversation and then agree whatever that is. And you may disagree to agree, but you will at least come to some arrangement within the room before it goes out publicly. So I take the point of what was trying to restrict people's voices, but I don't believe that that reads that way. It just gives you a pathway for what happens when inevitably people will come to opposing or different views. But that would just be my concern.
Paul?
Yeah, I agree with those comments. I mean, if this was about muzzling anyone, then they're not going to muzzle me or Francois, but it's not about that. This is about etiquette, and there's no surer way to lose the confidence of government if we go out into the public and we start bagging the other parties that were of leadership on this in this region. And the council starts shooting at each other. It's you quickly lose all that confidence, and all that goodwill that we built up through this forum would evaporate overnight. So it's not about that. It is really about just showing restraint and cohesion.
Thank you, Paul. Francois?
Yeah, so I don't know what the dilemma is here. What maybe a way forward is, as this thing's already been signed off, and there'll be no appetite to revisit this at Mayor's Chairs and Iwi, that we maybe Helen and myself and Paul and Barb, we take this back to the next Mayor's and Chairs and go, look, we had this concern, what's the view of the world, and shall we sort this out next time around? I mean, the only difference between this one and the ones in the last, how long, Paul, we've been on this thing forever, is that there's iwi signatures on there. That's the only difference in the last million years. So I think we just discuss it and make them corrections or tweak them words for the next time round.
Thank you, Francois. You hear that?
Yeah.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so thank you, Francois, for that. And Paul, so the resolution is that the report be received, that council adopts the 2025 to 2028 West Coast Radial Agreement, and that council endorses the mayor signing the agreement on behalf of Western District Council. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Manera, Councillor Martin, next one. Thank you. All in favour? Carried. Thank you, everybody, for that. And notes taken regarding that, taking it back for discussion. Right, next on the agenda, we have funding of the water services CCO set up, please, and is to speak on this one, please. This is page 95, 94, 96, no, 95 in the agenda.
And just to give people a little bit of a background and just to bring everyone up to date with where we're up to with this. This paper, as you know, the Buller District Council have been acknowledged as the Administration Council. We had a brief discussion about that across Mayor's Chairs and iwi. We're at a point where we now need to confirm the establishment and the funding budget, etc. Going into the establishment phase of the CCO, the CCO. Buller District Council provided a paper around how that could occur. Subsequently this week, Grey District Council had their meeting, and we were asked to endorse the papers, Grey and Westland, as the other two parts of the three-part partnership. Earlier this week, Grey has endorsed the paper. Buller District Council did have their ordinary meeting last night to discuss this paper. They have asked to get some further information from DIA. However, I have requested to the Mayor that we retain the paper and move through it in terms of the endorsement of essentially the establishment budget and the fact that it's required to be set up. And I've slightly amended how that would happen, because we need to be subject to what Buller finally puts through their council process in April. So essentially, we all know that the budget was set at 5.2 million. That was signed off. It's the water services plan that's been in place since October last year. There's no debate or discussion or litigation about that. The team has been working to work out what that looks like and how that will be presented to us. The setup now, the establishment phase has started now. We did the transition from October to December to get ourselves lined up. So it doesn't essentially change that. It's just that Buller wants some additional information to consider, and that they would then take their process through their council papers in April. So I've made a small amendment. So do you want to see those? We made a small amendment to the paper, which is 10.4.
One of the four.
Sorry,
Oh, for the recommendation, sorry.
this is 10.4 out of the recommendations, and I've inserted the words that because essentially the report is, the recommendations are that the report be received, that the council endorses a set-up approach and a budget of $5 million to assist the CPO, and that the council agrees to fund its 1/3 share of the debt required for the set-up costs. Now, we previously signed those off through the water services plan in our agreement of principle to do that, so it's now just putting that through. We're now in that phase. However, the 10.4 was how that would happen, and that was originally proposed that the council acknowledges the setup costs will initially be debt funded by Buller District Council, that was as the administration council, with this debt transferring to the CCO upon incorporation anticipated to occur on the 1st of July 27. I've inserted subject to the final decision from the Buller District Council, which is in regard to the administration function expected in April 26. So whatever that decision is, whether the Buller Administration Council, as it gets agreed and the paper gets agreed, that would be signed off as that's done in terms of our other two councils and themselves. Should another decision would be made, we would come back and revisit that part of the paper, which is how it would be undertaken. So we're not asking anybody to do anything functional in terms of something different. We're just acknowledging what Russell has asked for a time extension to do some further investigation. Sorry, I know it's a little bit complicated, but that's the way that it's rolled out. Questions?
Joseph's thinking.
It's administration.
Yeah, just through the chair, I was just thinking whether we need to be prudent to that, what's happening and what questions Buller's asked of, is it just around how they manage the debt, or is it relevant to our decision state?
A lot of the information they're seeking from DIA is very, very similar to what we had presented to us by DIA back, how many months ago that was. That's the level of information that they're seeking. They actually have not been privy to the amount of information or the in-depth quality of information that you guys have had.
Yeah.
And there are some serious gaps there with their comprehension of the whole process, how they got to this point in time, and then how everything works going forward. So they are a wee bit bereft of that insight, which is where they've got the problems.
Got it. Thank you.
Through the chair, so does each council decide, like, collectively, how much Buller's going to draw down on the line?
That comes up through the chair.
Yeah.
That comes up back through the CEs through to the 3 years. So any significant expenditure, and I do mean essentially any large expenditure would come back through, but CEs manage it going up. And that's where we talked about strengthening to make sure that the expenditure was all brought back through to the mayors so that they know. Because there's not an intention that the total amount is drawn down and then expended. It's due to be phased, and we would be agreeing that phase as it goes.
We'd be very, very firm on that point. Yeah. Councillor Mackenzie.
Through the chair, this is a question to Barb actually. With the funding set in place, is it the intentions to get the chair and the directors set up as quickly as possible, then provide an operating envelope with the balance of the funds to get the thing going?
So, Chair, the process has been that we pushed strongly is that we're keen to keep the 3 directors in place, go for recruitment for the 3 directors, get those in place, and get a CE appointed, and then they will determine the model and then be working through what that looks like and what the operating budget would look like, etc. So we're not trying to preempt anything or set anything in stone. That's absolutely inappropriate. but we're very keen, we manage how that gets done going forward.
Thank you. To the chair, when I look at the setup and establishment cost budget, and I was sort of thinking to myself, well, a lot of that stuff that money's been allocated for already exists among the three councils, and it just seems a bit excessive to me that using all this money to set up something new when it essentially already exists.
Through the chair. Because it's been, we needed to be able to understand the model, and the model then has the costs associated with it. That doesn't necessarily mean that that model will be the model going forward, or that those costs will be extended. So it's not a guarantee that we're going to spend it like that. There's still quite a bit of work to be done to tease that out, let alone look at where there could be services that can be shared between the three councils. That work still needs to be done. But ideally, you would do that through with the CE in place so that you could have that model moving for what that would be. I take your point, but that's how it's always been, and we haven't changed. None of that is any different to anything we presented to you previously in terms of. But all of that has been placed. We've tried to reassure you that nothing will be done without eyes over the wall. It's not all going to be pulled down and just see. It's not how it's going to be.
Yes, Councillor.
Through the chair, and it does seem like it's clarified in the principles for managing setup and establishment costs that that savings will be had wherever possible.
It's just we can't quantify them with the level of detail that we need to bring back to be able to.
And you need to budget at the higher end, I mean.
There is most definitely the focus on, not being extravagant with this, just because you've got 5 mil doesn't mean you have to spend it.
Yeah, that's the biggest concern.
That's the biggest concern I think we've all got. The 250K that was allocated for the initial setup stage is part of that 5 mil. It's not on top of, and it's not a free gift. So that's already been consumed. But that is part of our role at the table, is to be overseeing this and have the confidence that we've got it right. Challenge where it needs to be challenged. And if we're not happy with the answers or the information provided, then we dig deeper into that. I certainly don't believe it's spending just because you've been allocated the funds. And that leads back to what Councillor McKenzie mentioned before. So our intention is that if we can get the board, the chair, the board in place, then they then go through to appoint the CC, to the CD, etc. And it's up to them to appoint the staffing program to the CE, who will then go ahead and appoint the staff that he needs. But that takes out the consultants at that stage. We don't need them to be at the table the whole way through. So it's a matter of running this the right way, for the right reason, for the right end result. Which is taking a lot of oversight by the chief executive and also the mayors. So any further questions on Francois, do you want, or Paul, do you want to add anything to comments that have already been made? No.
No, nothing from me.
No.
Not really anything to add. I mean, it's just that, I mean, we're on this conveyor belt, and you know, we need to just continue. You know, the government is really firm on this, and yeah, I mean, it's not something we can stop right now. So yeah, I'm in favour.
Thank you. So if there's nothing further, the resolution is that the report be received. The council endorses a set-up budget of 5 mil for the water services CCO. The council agrees to fund its 1/3 share of the debt required for the set-up, and that council acknowledges the set-up costs will initially be debt funded by Water District Council, subject to the final decision from Water District Council, which is expected around April 2026. With this debt transferring to the CCO upon incorporation anticipated to occur on the 1st of July 2027. So do I have a mover and a seconder, please, to cover that 4-step resolution? Councillor Maitland? Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Burden, thank you very much. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Is Stephen on here? Not yet. Okay, thank you.
Thank everybody for that. Next on the agenda, we have the alcohol restriction law, bylaw, sorry, and we have the general manager of regulatory and compliance. Lee, here with us. Lee.
Your worship.
Page 97 for those that, no, it's not. It's page 107.
Thank you very much indeed. I'll take the report, but just to add to that, the purpose of this report is to consider the adoption of the alcohol restriction bylaw, and for that to commence on the 6th of March. That's just to give us time to put it in and circulate that the adoption, should you do that through meetings. And you'll recall back in December that you resolved to consult on the proposed bylaw at that time, which we did, and we did that following the Local Government Act and the special consultative procedure that we need to follow in relation to that. Following that, we had one formal submission in support of the reinstatement of the bylaw, but I also met my colleagues from the Ministry of Health that we would do routinely anyway, informally, to get any thoughts or comments from them as well, given the short time frame that you recall what we discussed back in December. They gave some comments in relation to some of the wording of the bylaw, which led to some minor editorial amendments to just to simplify the language that we're using in the bylaw, so it's easier for the reader to understand. And so that is the bylaw that you have in front of you today. But I'm happy to take any questions outside.
Thank you, Lee. Questions? Councillor Mackenzie.
Through the chair, who was the party that wrote the submission? It's not in the report.
And forgive me for that, and the only reason that I didn't attach that before, and I can't remember the gentleman's, actually just Flo. Thank you. Yes, that's who it was. And it was literally a sentence to say that they support the reinstatement of the bylaw. If there was any sort of more detail in relation to that, I would have attached it to the report. We linked in with the police prior to any sort of formal consultation, and they were supportive of the reinstatement as well, but didn't give any amendments to that.
No.
I've got a further question. But, there's also nothing in the report about the baseline harm level. Like you talked about stuff with the Ministry of Health, but there's nothing in here that says the necessity for this bylaw, like, and any metrics that support it.
And you may recall, Councillor, that when we had the conversation back in December, we talked about, so that's that 155, section 155 of the Local Government Act, the analysis that takes place, to look at, well, the reason for the bylaw and its inception many years ago, and the data that was presented there, is without having a bylaw in place, the fear that the issues that needed the bylaw in the first place would then be replaced again. So that those issues that we don't see today would tend to come back if we didn't have the ability to control minor levels of control that this bylaw does, the consumption of alcohol in public places. So that's the only reason why I haven't put it inside there, because that data was from many years ago. We don't have that data today because we have the bylaw today.
And good afternoon to Councillor Gillette, who's joined us online. Thank you, Stephen. We'll just see the alcohol restriction bylaw section.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Lee? Yes. Sorry, Councillor Maitland.
Sorry, yeah, Chair, in map A, it's a permanent restriction. Does that include people with White Bay huts that might be down the river catching white bay and having a few beers? Or?
If it's within that map area, yes, it would.
Thank you.
If it's a public place.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Through the chair, what led to the geographic restriction? You know, there's no geographic restriction, Kumara or Franz Joseph. It seems to just be Ortica. I understand the one for the Wild Foods Festival, but it seems quite excessive, the geographic area.
Through the chair, to go back to your original question, that's because that was the area that had been identified previously. And so other areas such as Franz Joseph, by way of example, there isn't any matters that have come to our attention through our colleagues, the police, to provide the necessity to extend the bylaw to those locations. Should that happen in the future, that will be coming back to this table again to say, since today, we've had these matters arise, and there's a recommendation to extend the area or the restrictions that we have in Home Ticket to Franz Joseph or Kamara or whatever.
No, Chair, I'm just concerned that we're kind of leaning on historic data a bit too much and nothing's relevant to today. I mean, less young people are drinking, things like that. So, but we're going a bit heavy-handed with such restrictions, aren't we?
From my perspective, again through the chat, I don't believe that we are. However, that is your decision. What I would advise is that if you don't adopt the bylaw today, which is your decision, you will not have a bylaw in place for any restrictions that you might want to impose for the festival. But I simple.
Thank you, Lee, for that. And I think the main thing is with that sort of the restriction that's there, it actually stops the ability to walk around town with alcohol at hand. There's also a glass factor that goes with that, with a risk factor as well. So appreciate that. Right, so if there's no further questions for Lee, the resolution is that the report be received and that council approves the alcohol restriction bylaw 2026 to commence on the 6th of March 2026. I have a mover to seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Martin. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Burdon, thank you very much. All in favour?
Yes.
Councillor Maitland and Councillor Walker and Councillor Mackenzie, what are we doing for votes, sorry?
Yeah, I'm fine.
I just don't think it's enough data to make a decision for me personally.
So if we can, do you want that vote recorded?
No, I just against.
Right, okay. Sorry, gentlemen, are we against, are we for things?
I'm happy to vote for it, it's fine.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Maitland?
I'll abstain. There's one part that, you know, I don't fully agree with. You know, I can understand with the Wild Foods Festival, like councillor, I don't think there's a real historic evidence to show that this it gets out of hand around town. And in the end of the day, it's the police job. It's civil disobedience.
It may be a police job, councillor, but it's actually our bylaw that enables them to carry out their job. Without the bylaw, they do not have a lot of powers as far as managing that, unless they can actually arrest somebody for disorderly behaviour. So they have to use the bylaw to act under, and that's what the power that it gives them to manage.
But can't they use disturbing the peace as a rule? That is a rule that the police can use.
Having this bylaw, especially when alcohol's involved, just enables them a lot more power and a lot more ability, just without having to wield power, to actually just have a presence there of enforcement. And yeah, so you're not talking about the heavy-handed coming down heavy-handed, you still got that presence, and they do. Rugby season, Wild Foods, they'll walk around town, it's that presence, people know, which is I think why we haven't had a profound problem over the X amount of years, because we used to have that bylaw and people know it's been there in the past, they just acknowledge that they're not allowed to do that. But there will be a time when people start pushing that limit, and this just helps us manage our town proactively rather than reactively as well. So yeah. So if I can just go back to the vote, sorry, Councillor Monero, Councillor Martin, Councillor Walker, Councillor Gillette, Councillor Burdon, and myself, Councillor Mackenzie, you were for or against?
Against.
Against, and you wanted to.
Yeah, I'll go.
You go for, okay, so we've got one against, thank you, and the rest will vote. All in favour of that, please, because it's all bar one, thank you, we're there with that, so that's carried, thank you very much. Report received and underway, thank you very much, Lee, for that.
Next on the agenda, we have the waste management. Sorry, consenting and compliance committee. Sorry, I've jumped one. Sorry. And how do we beat me, didn't I? Again, we hand over to Lee, please, for the consenting and compliance committee report.
Thank you. I'll take the report as read, and I think it's fair to say that the establishment of this committee in the previous triennium, has been a number of conversations when I look back through different council reports and discussions, and I think it's important, as Kaipakari Majwik had pointed out previously, is not to lose sight of the reason that the committee was established at that point in time in the previous triennium, and to recognise and acknowledge that there were some challenges in the consenting and compliance space. There were some delays with regards to the processing of consents, but also the fact that it was felt that there wasn't a forum with regards to customers, applicants, to be able to voice their concerns, to get some traction and to move things forward. But following that, though, is to also look at where we are today and to look at what we have today. With regards to the consenting times that we have, just checking with my team today, is that we are still at 100%. To look at the fact that we have a high level of senior management in place to oversee that, not just for myself, but with the senior leadership team and obviously with the chief executive. I personally have met with any complainants that we have, to discuss any concerns that people may have, to try and find a solution to move things forward. I am not aware of any outstanding issues or concerns from that perspective. There are also, should anything happen in the future, the ability for customers to relay those through the mayor, through the chief executive, through myself, or even coming to the public forums that we have for yourselves as well, to ensure that we are meeting the needs of customers and to try and find solutions based on that point of view. And so following through with my report, I kind of identified the three main areas of I guess the disestablishment of that committee and how that came about and the conversations that have taken place in relation to that. And my report talks to the point of that has previously been had, that unless that committee has been through a resolution of yourselves in a specific part of the legislation, then that committee ends at the end of the triennium, basically, as you have discussed previously. Having said that, for the avoidance of doubt within my report, I put it as a recommendation to acknowledge that, and that the committee is my recommendation, is not required for those reasons. The concerns and issues that gave rise to it, that they are not there today, I would argue from that point of view. And then the need for that committee moving forward, and for the reasons that I've just spoken to and outlined in my report, is that I do not believe that today that committee is needed, and that is my recommendation. I'm happy to take any further questions.
Any questions, please? What I can do to support Lee's report is that I'm the one that stood up that committee previously, because when I came into my position, there was a serious backload of issues that hadn't been addressed, and that behaviour carried on for some time, creating a lot of frustration out there in the public sector and the private sector. The committee never really got off the ground due to pushback, but what I will say is that since Barb's been on board and then subsequently Lee, when Barb came into the office, I gave her quite a file of issues, and she worked systematically through every one of them. She met with a lot of the people, and Lee's done the same. He's been out on site to deal with a lot of these people, to meet with them, talk with them, have that visual assessment, and everything's been dealt with as it comes into the building now, and it's a real pleasure, because what we've got to separate is that you get people that don't like the rules and they want to do something their way. That's that sort of thing. But when you're trying to make a process and you've got nobody to talk to, and you've got no comprehension of what pathway you have to follow, as when Lee says, they come in and sit down with Lee or his team and they go through that. They have a better understanding of what they've got to do, what requirements they've got to meet, and away they go. So the whole operation is a lot better and tidier than what it's ever been. And I'm really, really proud of that, because
you know, you always hear grumblings out there, but there's always two sides to a story, but the performance now is exceptional compared to where it was. So it's something that we can be very proud of as a council because it's a huge difference. Tahiri Matchway.
Thank you, through your worship. Yeah, look, I'm not trying to establish another layer of bureaucracy, that's for sure. The less bureaucracy, the better, in my view. But this was something that was there was a very clear need for it. We did have that logjam of issues that were unresolved and were going around in circles. And while it's good that we seem to have resolved a lot of these, I hope some of them are not just quietly melted into the background through fatigue, because I know some of the complainants or the disgruntled ratepayers out there were fatigued from getting nowhere. And it's good though that, and I do acknowledge that a lot of them have been resolved, which is great. And however, it'd be naive of us to think that we've solved the all the problems now, and there's not going to be any more need because we've got an open door policy. It's only as good as the current staff, and staff change, and staff interpretation of the rules change with one person.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had that in the past, and I dare say we're going to have it again in the future. However, having said all that, now that we do have the public forum and the council meetings, there is that forum there that didn't exist before. What did previously years ago until the council wiped it arbitrarily. But we've reinstated that, so there is now a forum for that. If things ever got back to the state they were in only 18 months ago, 12 months ago, then I would be bringing this idea back to the council. But for now, I would agree we can do without.
Oh, thank you, Paul, for that. Councillor Burton.
And Paul did sum up my thoughts exactly very well, so I'm just support absolutely what Paul just said. And I know that talking to some of these developers that were in our ear, some years ago about all these issues, they now have a very good working relationship with the council. So it's testament to the work that's been done by the staff and getting those relationships back on track. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burton, for that, and it's always good for that feedback to go back to Lee and take that back to his team as well. Councillor Walker.
To the chair, obviously I'm very passionate about service, and urban health policy is great. And hopefully those systems are being put in place culturally within the building, that there are changes. Sort of that's the way in which the council operates. I guess my main question is there a mechanism down the line? Is there reporting to us, or like, is there a way that maybe we could get some feedback in the future if there's an unusual amount of issues arising, that this committee could be reinstated?
I think if we get, you'll know pretty quickly, because last time myself and the councillors, we were inundated with people, as was Paul. And so that's the biggest headway you've got, in fact something's not working.
Yeah.
So the first conversation you have was with Barb, who then talks to Lee, and they look at why and have that conversation. We're in a totally different environment to managing these things that we were, but I'm fully aware that a change of mayor, councillors and or staff, and you've got a different situation.
Yeah.
And that's where the beauty is that as the mayor, I can set up committees as they're deemed to be essential. But the first protocol has got to be able to be amended in-house first and foremost. It can't, this was a long-standing issue, and I say long-standing, I'm talking number of years, a lot of years, too long. Lee.
Your wish as well is just to add to that is that we will be reaching out, and we've already started to reach out to more developers and more of the industry per se. And I will be going out as well to different communities to introduce myself and to make myself visible to say, if you have these concerns, these are my contact details, come and talk to me. And to your worship's point of if I'm not successful in that and things were to go back to what you have experienced in the past, it's going to be very quickly evident.
Very much so. Yeah. Anything further regarding police report on the city compliance? Nothing further? So with that, the resolution is that the report be received and that council agrees that a consenting the compliance committee is not required at this time. I'll move into seconder, please. Councillor Maitland, thank you very much. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Martin. All in favour?
Aye.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you, everybody, for that, and thank you very much, Lee. Right, next on the agenda is the waste management, and we have here to talk to us about that. Welcome to the table, David.
Through the chair, I'll give a bit of context for David on this. In December of last year, Ms. Morgan came in, and you'll remember he had an overview of position around waste management and certain types of treatment, and there was quite a lot of, I suppose you'd say, interest from councillors on how this is going and what was happening. David's provided a notation paper on that, which shows what activities we're undertaking, what we're doing. One item that's not in there was, I see, reviewing in the last minutes around Butler's landfill. People wanted to know how much room we've got out there. There's approximately 15 years worth of landfill capability out there. It really depends on quantities of waste every year. And that's in the current cells that are there at the moment, and the ones that were implemented by central government helped us out financially in 2020, 2021, when we built another cell out there. Still hasn't been active yet, so that's good. So we haven't started filling that. So each one of those cells is about a hectare, and it gives us about 13 years or so of storage, depending on quantities. The site is big enough in itself that we can probably put another cell out there if we need to in the future. Really depends on how that squeezes in with our resource consent for the site. And I'll hand over to David.
Okay, councillors, I said that the report was being read. The report was, the intention was to give as much information for people to understand the waste, and hopefully there's no questions. Well, I'll open up for any questions.
Thank you, David. All right, questions, please. Yes, Councillor Maitland.
Thank you. To the chair, there's just two questions. I think there might have been a bit of a typo on the how many tonnes of tyres. I think it might have been 3.8 tonnes, but never mind. But I just want to ask about the glass shipment of the glass. Is that what is the glass crushed before it's shipped so they can get more glass on the truck, or is it still like in empty bottles? Just wondering if it could be cheaper to ship it if it was crushed rather than.
Through the chair. So the team at the transfer station do have a crusher. Before they load it, they do just break it. They don't want to create powder, but they do crush it down to get more material onto the truck. It makes it more feasible to cart more material at the same cost. So that is in place already.
Councillor Martin.
What provision have we got for soft plastic recycling?
Through the chair, at the moment, the MIF plant in Greymouth cannot work soft material. It is a high cost to implement it, so at this stage there is not enough volumes to implement it. Even through the free councils, the volumes does not stack up to explain the cost for the plant. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality.
Councillor Maitland.
To the chair, it has been mentioned before about establishing a sort of a methane plant to take off gas from the site. Would that be too small to interest, say, a third party to develop something like that?
The chair. Nowadays, most new development sites for landfills have that implemented already. The size of the cells out there at the moment does not make it viable for methane extraction. It's too small.
Yes.
I just want to thank David. I think it's a really good report.
Through the chair, we're working hard to implement any new initiatives we have. We do actually have to balance out about cost of implementation versus cost of disposal. The levies are going up as usual. Carbon credit prices have dropped actually, so that's quite good. But processing of the materials is still very expensive to do. We're only small. The tourists generally, for a 3-day stay, they say that a tourist will bring in about 2 kilos of waste per unit. So the more tourists you get, the more waste you get. Around about a quarter to a third of our waste that goes into the landfill is said to be from tourists. It's very, very hard to manage, but they did a study some time ago. That's sort of found. And the community's grown. So our waste quantities at the moment are on the way up, but there's reasons behind that.
I think it's a valid point you make, earlier on the tourism waste. I think it's something that we need to factor in with discussions with Wellington collectively around the country. They've got to look at some form of subsidisation to the ratepayers, because the weight that the burden that the ratepayers have got with the tourism industry across the whole field is just prohibitive. So yeah, I'll factor that. I'll come and see if some more information, some facts and figures to have for that. Thank you. Councillor Burton.
I've had a couple of conversations with people that live in the Cockatoo Township, and some of them have asked questions around, is there any possibility of stemming the waste collection out that way? Obviously that they would pay for that, but has it been looked into? Is there a reason why there's a boundary? Some areas.
Through the chair, there was a ring fenced area, so to speak, for that, because the further out you go, the more expensive it is to run. There's a general waste rate that pays for disposal of waste, and then there's of course, everyone that has bins pays a yearly amount for that. The further out you get, the more expensive it is, the more expensive it becomes for the general rate. They are not, you have to have different set rates for that. I mean, if they want to have waste, there's commercial operators out there that can supply that.
Yeah, and I think that's, yeah, no, thank you for that.
So you're saying that you think that they'd be happy to take on a rate to supply them that service?
I think that, yeah, no. I've just had a couple of conversations with them where I assume they have a private supplier at the moment doing their waste, but they think council should be doing it. So what they probably don't realise that if council was doing it, they would be paying probably just as much, if not more, than they would be for the queue.
Through the chair, yeah, it becomes user pays, and if they don't dump as much, they don't pay as much. So yeah.
Just a question around the charges for commercial ratepayers for dropping off recycling. That's a new thing. How was that decision made in-house? Was it made by council or?
It was made through the council. It was the council, and it was because of the new contract that we had coming in, and the amount we had to pay sorted through and get fine for commercial users. And
yeah, that's right. I'll have to like to know what meeting that was. I'll talk about it later.
So the reason we introduced that is the other two districts had it already in place, and people tend to drive their recyclables here. So that filled our cost. It raised our cost. So we had to implement it is to just level it down. That's not the only reason, but that was part of why we introduced.
We had commercial operators bringing in recycling from our district. They can dump here for free, and the others they have to pay. So.
And that's what brought the decision to the table and the action that the council decided on. Councillor Maitland, did you have another?
Yes, to the chair, has there been a cost benefit analysis for transporting the waste from Haast up to Butlers?
You're talking about how the Haast landfill is going to be closing soon? Yeah. Currently at the moment, we only have about between 8 and 12 tonnes a month go into that landfill. It's not actually very much. So essentially, it's only a truckload of waste to come up once a month, or maybe a fraction more. So you just work that out back through. It's a cost balance between having that landfill open and not. We don't want to implement a new landfill down there because the resource consent requirements are excessive. That's a long-standing, more of a tip face type landfill than what we progress here. So yeah, it's probably going to be in the vicinity of about $2,000 a year for the last.
Any further questions, please? Nothing on the screen?
Right, so the resolution is that the report be received. I'll have a mover and a seconder, please.
Councillor Walker, Councillor Mackenzie, all in favour?
Thank you, carried. Thanks very much, David. And Earl, very appreciated. Right, and next on the agenda, we have administrative resolutions, to which the Chief Executive will speak to us on that.
Just saying that, I have requested that the following items regarding future governance and delivery of the Wildfoods Festival and the Hokitika wastewater treatment plant, are able to be released to the public because it was undertaken in the confidential component of the meeting. And if you'll bear with me, I'll just speak through the actual, move of the resolution here just for completeness, so everybody knows what was said. So it was moved by Councillor Manera, seconded by Councillor Munns, and resolved that the report has been received and the council approves a 1-year transition period under which the council will assume ownership and governance responsibility for the 2027 Wild Food Festival with the following provisions. That Destination Western will deliver the 2026 Wild Foods Festival in March under the current arrangements. That Destination Western Limited will be requested to transfer all Wild Foods Festival intellectual property, trademarks and brand assets to council as part of the transition. That Destination Western Limited provide council with all Wild Foods Festival operational, financial, contractual and governance records, including financial information within agreed timeframes. That staff confirm the date for the 2026 Wild Foods 2027 Wild Foods Festival by March 2026 to ensure continuity and report back to council within 12 months with recommendations on the preferred long-term governance and delivery or not model for the event. So that was for the Wild Foods Festival. And for the resolution for the Hokitika wastewater treatment plant was moved by Councillor Manera, seconded by Councillor Munns, and resolved that the report be received and the council staff be instructed to proceed to the next stage of the process and to go out to tender in accordance with the long-term plan. So those will be released, will be released to the public.
Through the chair, I objected to that with the wastewater plant.
And like that, it will be recorded in that. Sorry, I just did the resolution, but I'll make sure that's on the. We will not be releasing the resolution publicly. It's just announcing it, but I'll make sure that that's noted officially for the documentation.
Any questions, clarification on that? Yes, Councillor Martin.
In relation to the Wild Foods, in respect for them to be reporting back within 12 months, what happens after March 2027? I should identify this earlier, but for Destination Western to report back within 12 months is pushing it out to March 2027.
No, apologies. It's that once the 2027 Wild Foods Festival has been held,
2026.
Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong part, sorry.
That's your staff, Barb, I think, coming back to us with a report on the future.
Yes.
Oh, right, sorry.
It's not,
So not
it's
yet.
so the 2026 Wild Foods Festival, which will be held next month in March, we would expect a report back in July from Destination Westland as to how that event was undertaken and what in terms of financial, etc., returns are. So we expect that in July, that's a 6 month. But is after the, we hold the 2027 event, we would expect to be reporting back within that 12 months so that, but you can then just see what model would go, or if the council was to be involved in that model.
Yes, that's right.
I read it out the right way, but it's printed the wrong way. Sorry.
That's right. Right, does everybody understand that? Everybody's absorbed that? No. Okay, so the resolution is that council approves the public release of the resolutions agreed upon relating to 1, the future governance and delivery of Wild Foods Festival, and 2, the Hokitika wastewater treatment plant. Councillor Burden, thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Oh, right. Councillor Walker, or do Councillor Manera? He hasn't done it for a while. All in favour? All in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for that. Right, so moving on, next item is the, well, actually now we're going, resolution to go into the public excluded, please. So I'm after moving second, please, the resolve that council move into the public excluded section at 2:41 PM. Move the seconder, please. Councillor Walker, thank you very much. I'm a seconder. Councillor Manera, thank you very much. I'd like to thank the members of the public that have been present through the meeting, viewing the live stream, and all those in attendance at the meeting today. We'll be adjourning the meeting for 2 minutes to allow the council to disconnect from the Zoom from the open section of the meeting, and then we'll reconnect via the second Zoom invite for the public excluded section of the meeting. So if our two Aries and Councillor Gillette can move on to the other Zoom link, that would be appreciated, and we'll see you shortly. Thank you.